This isn't here for views. It's here so we can all learn from the one man's silence and one woman's mistake.
The first time I saw my wife dressed for another man, I was elbow deep in oil. I was in the garage, bent over the busted mower that had been stalling all summer, when I heard her heels click against the tile. Then her voice floated in, too casual. "Does this look too much?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just wiped my hands with an old shop rag and turned around. And there she was, Rachel, my wife of 11 years, standing in the doorway in a black dress so sheer it may as well have come off a lingerie rack. Nothing underneath, no bra, no slip, just Rachel, nipples visible under the kitchen light like this was some twisted fashion show. No shame, no second guessing, just a cocked hip and her usual smug smirk. "My boss invited me as his guest to the executive dinner," she added, voice sweet as syrup, "just business." She held my gaze like it was a game. I didn't blink. "Of course," I said, deadpan. That smile twitched wider. "You're not even going to ask who'll be there?" "Nope." She studied me for a second, almost amused, like she thought she'd won something. Then she turned and strutted toward the front door, heels tapping in time with the echoing thought in my head, "just business." It's funny how men learn silence before strategy. That silence right there, that wasn't defeat. That was the sound of a chessboard flipping in my brain, one where the queen had just made a reckless move, and the king decided to stop protecting her. Before we go any further, I'll ask one thing, a quiet favor from one man to another. If you're still reading and stories like this hit you where you live, do me a solid and hit subscribe. Most people don't, but it fuels the team that brings these moments to life. Thanks. Now, back to the wreckage. She left around 6:40. No goodbye, just the scent of whatever perfume she only wore to work functions, woodsy, sharp, and now permanently tied in my mind to the sound of betrayal. The garage felt smaller after that. Not because I was crying. I wasn't. I haven't in years. But because the air changed. You ever smell something you know doesn't belong? That's what it was like. The moment she walked out, it wasn't our house anymore. It was hers and his, on lease. I walked into the kitchen, turned the porch light off, sat at the counter. Her wine glass from last night was still there, lipstick stained like a signature. Red, the kind she said was too much for family dinners, but perfect for work events. Yeah. I opened the laptop, clicked through her Instagram. Nothing scandalous, of course. She's smarter than that. But the clues were there. One was in a company story post, just a half-second clip of a toast at the last off-site, her hand brushing too closely against a man in a gray suit, the same suit hanging in our hall closet the week prior when she claimed she had a seamstress emergency for work. The man in that clip, clean-shaven, smug, and clearly not her manager. No wedding ring. I zoomed in on the glass reflection from the back wall mirror, Rachel's back, leaning too close. Subtle, if you're blind. Damning, if you've ever studied the way your wife used to touch you. Her phone pinged in the hallway. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The passwords had changed anyway. She'd made that shift 2 weeks ago and claimed it was just for security. Right. Same week, she stopped asking about my day and started checking her teeth in the hallway mirror before leaving. It wasn't rage I felt, it was calibration, like a safecracker finally hearing the last tumbler fall into place. So I made a reservation, that same restaurant. I already knew the venue. Rachel had left the invite on the kitchen island 3 days ago, strategically forgotten, like she wanted me to see it, like she thought I'd stew in it while she waltzed around in a transparent dress with a corporate predator and a glass of Merlot. But I didn't stew. I plotted. Table for two, Thursday night. Close enough to the private dining room, but not so close as to be noticed right away. Just in range for the moment I'd choose to be noticed. As for my second guest, that plan was still coming together, but I already had a name in mind, one she wouldn't see coming in a million years. And oh, she should have. She came home past 10 nights in a row, and each time the story got shorter. Long meeting. Traffic was awful. He just wouldn't stop talking. She never said his name at first, just he. Then one night, halfway through pouring herself a second glass of Cabernet, she slipped. Graham's wife apparently used to be in advertising too, so he gets it. Graham. So now the boss had a name. That changed things. It gave the shadow a face. I didn't say a word, just nodded like I cared about Graham's wife's past marketing career, like I wasn't mentally cataloging how many times she'd brought him up in the last 2 weeks. 11, by the way. I'd counted. 11 mentions. Zero context. The phone thing came next. She used to leave it on the nightstand. Now it never left her side, even in the bathroom. She'd changed the lock screen to some artsy black and white photo of a tree against a gray sky, like she was auditioning for depression. New password, no notifications. But I noticed something odd the second night. I listened closely enough. Her phone buzzed twice at 1:13 a.m., and she didn't even flinch, didn't even reach for it. That's when it clicked. Do not disturb. She was expecting messages, just not from me. So I watched. Not the kind of watching you see in movies, no peeking through blinds or stalking. I let her feel safe, let her think the performance worked. I went through the motions, ate the dinners she made with her new kick of saffron, laughed when she told me about her coworker who microwaved salmon in the break room, pretended like I didn't notice that she'd started wearing perfume to client calls held over Zoom. Rachel always had tells, little ones. Her sarcasm used to have bite, now it just came out hollow. She played with her necklace when she lied, twirled her wedding ring when she was nervous. That was the real giveaway. The ring stayed on less and less. Sometimes it'd be forgotten on the sink after a shower. Once I found it tucked in a coat pocket. She said it got caught in the lining. I didn't argue. You don't argue when someone's digging their own hole. Instead, I booked the table. I remembered the name of the restaurant from the invite. She'd left it on the counter for a full 2 hours that morning before accidentally tucking it into her tote bag right before heading out. I saw the logo, the reservation time, 7 eager p.m., Thursday, Willow & Co. is upscale, trendy, loud enough for plausible deniability, but quiet enough for whispered deals and sleazy compliments. I made my own reservation, same night, table for 2, different name, a different credit card, 2, one she didn't know I had. I picked a table facing the private dining room entrance. I'd already looked up the layout online. Modern surveillance doesn't need trench coats anymore, just Yelp photos and an email confirmation. She didn't ask about my plans for Thursday, she just assumed I'd be home. I even helped her steam her dress that morning, the one with the high slit and plunging neckline. She said it was for confidence. I bet it is, I murmured. What's that? She asked. I smiled. Just glad to see you investing in your career. She beamed, clueless. That night I didn't eat, didn't drink, just sat in the living room staring at the sliding glass door and my reflection in the dark. The face looking back wasn't angry, just done. There's a strange relief in knowing, like finally figuring out where the rattle in your engine is coming from. You still have to fix it, but at least you're not crazy. At 9:43 p.m., she walked in, humming, heels in hand, a shimmer of sweat on her collarbone. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Big things are coming." Graham said I have leadership potential. I nodded. Late night? She shrugged. One of the execs had too much Pinot and kept telling college stories. She curled up on the couch, phone tilted just out of view. Her fingers tapped faster than usual. Then she locked it and yawned dramatically. Bed, she muttered. Sleep well, I said. She didn't even say goodnight. The next morning I picked out my suit and then I made a second call. The other seat at the restaurant wasn't going to stay empty, and if I was going to watch the circus unfold, I figured I might as well bring someone who still believed in honor, someone whose approval she used to chase like oxygen. I just hoped he'd still recognize the daughter he once raised. Walter lived in a modest one-story brick house with an American flag that never touched the ground and a porch swing that hadn't moved since his wife passed. It was the kind of place where respect was baked into the walls. Shoes off at the door, coffee served black, no room for excuses. The air smelled faintly of gun oil and cedar. Rachel always said her dad was stuck in the past. Personally, I preferred it. The past, at least, had rules. He opened the door before I knocked. Tom, he nodded, stepping aside. You never visit without her. Everything all right? Mind if I come in? He didn't answer, just held the door open and motioned to the table. Same one we sat at every Christmas when Rachel still had enough decency to call this place home. I sat. He poured coffee, no sugar, no cream. sat across from me with the same rigid posture I remembered from his Marine photos, back straight, arms resting on the table like he was ready for a mission briefing. Something happened? I slid the manila envelope across to him. You still think Rachel's the same woman you raised? His face didn't move at first, then his fingers tensed just slightly as he opened the flap. I didn't speak, just let him pull the papers out one by one. There were 6 of them. High-quality printouts, screenshots from Instagram, LinkedIn event tags, and one pulled from a coworker's story, Rachel in a low-cut dress, glass in hand, her body angled toward Graham like gravity was doing her favors. In one, his hand was on her lower back. In another, they were laughing just a little too close, with her biting her lip in that way she used to when she wanted something. The 4th photo was the one that did it. A group picture at the leadership off-site. Everyone in business casual, name tags visible. Graham's hand wasn't on her back this time. It was on her hip. Fingers spread like he owned her. Walter stared at that one the longest. She said this was work, I said, voice steady. Team building. She said she was going as a representative of the company. His knuckles whitened. She left me out of it, on purpose, because she knew I'd ask questions. She's changed, Walter, and she didn't even bother hiding it. He didn't look up. Just said quietly, I told her never to embarrass her family. I nodded once. I'm taking you to dinner Thursday night. I'll drive. He finally met my eyes. Where? Willow & Co. His lips tightened. That place is not cheap. It's not about the bill. He held my stare. Then, after a long pause, he slid the photos back into the envelope, folded it once, and stood. Walked to the living room. I thought he was going to throw the whole thing in the trash. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out an old tie clip, gold with a small eagle, globe, and anchor. His dress clip. Hadn't seen that thing in years. He ran a thumb over it. She's not going to like me being there. No, I said, she's not. He slipped the clip into his shirt pocket and walked back in. Pick me up at 6:30 sharp. I stood. Yes, sir. It wasn't sarcastic. You don't joke with a man like Walter when you've just shown him the unrecognizable face of his own daughter. As I left, I noticed a photo still framed above the fireplace. Rachel at 18, graduation cap tilted, hugging her mom, her dad standing behind her like a damn statue of honor. Clean face, bright eyes, a future still untarnished. The photo didn't match the woman from the prints, not even close. And now, Walter knew it too. I didn't feel good. Revenge isn't about feeling good. It's about symmetry, about forcing someone to see what they've tried so hard to keep hidden. And Thursday night, the curtain would fall. I tied my Windsor knot tighter than usual that night. Not because I wanted to look good, I wanted to look finished, like a man who came prepared to bury something. The navy suit was one Rachel once bought me for a company gala, said it made me look respectable but forgettable. That always stuck with me. How easily she dressed me up like I was some background prop in her life. Tonight, it felt like armor. Walter answered the door in silence. The man hadn't aged in 2 days, but his presence felt heavier. Blazer, stiff as a board, slacks with a crease you could slice a tomato on. The military pin at his collar gleamed like a warning shot. His hair was combed the same way he wore it in Vietnam photos, and he didn't say a word as he got into the passenger seat of my truck. He didn't have to. The whole ride was quiet, not awkward, just loaded. We pulled into the Willow & Cobra lot at 6:49 p.m. I wanted 10 minutes buffer, time to prepare the terrain. Rachel's reservation was for 7 sharp, executive private dining suite. I'd already scoped the layout, 2 rooms off to the side of the main dining area, separated by frosted glass and some thin, pretentious curtain drapes that screamed, "We're important." The hostess greeted us with a glossy smile. Reservation for 2? Bennett, I said. Corner table, east side. She checked, nodded. Of course, Mr. Bennett, right this way. As we walked through the dining room, I passed her a folded 100, slipped clean between the dessert menus like it belonged there. Could you let me know when the private party arrives? I murmured. She gave the barest nod, discreetly. Our table was perfect, angled just enough to get a clean sight line into the private room if you leaned a bit left. Candlelight flickered in a low glass orb between us. Water was poured, menus delivered, but neither of us even glanced at them. Walter sat like he was on watch. Back straight, chin up, eyes scanning like the enemy might breach at any moment. At 7:06, the hostess reappeared briefly, then vanished toward the far end. 30 seconds later, Rachel walked in. Graham followed, hand on the small of her back. She was wearing the same sheer black dress, the one she said was a little much when she first showed it to me. Now it wasn't even trying to pretend. Graham wore a gray suit, no tie, arrogance tucked neatly into every fold. He didn't even glance around, just pulled out her chair, leaned in to whisper something in her ear. She laughed, head tilted, lip bite and all. Walter saw it. His jaw clenched so hard I heard the molars grind. I haven't seen her laugh like that since. He trailed off. Couldn't finish. Yeah, I said quietly. They sat, wine already waiting. Graham gave the waiter a lazy smile. Rachel crossed her legs deliberately, one of those practice moves she used when she knew eyes were on her. She hadn't noticed us yet, not fully. Walter hadn't blinked in a full minute. You all right? I asked. I'm waiting, he said. That's what Marines do. We wait until it's time to move. Graham poured her a glass. Their knees brushed. She leaned in and tapped his wrist playfully with her fingernail. That's when Walter's nostrils flared. He looked at me. You're sure this is how you want to do it? Not sure of much lately, I said, but I know she won't forget it. He nodded once, just once. At 7:22, I waved the waiter over. Would you mind sending a bottle of the 17 Malbec to the private room over there? Compliments of the gentleman in the corner. The waiter raised a brow. I smiled. Tell them it's from someone who believes in transparency. Walter chuckled once. Dry, cold. She'll understand that better than you think. We watched as the bottle was delivered. The server gestured discreetly in our direction. Rachel turned. It was instant. Her body went rigid. The glass froze midway to her lips. Graham said something. She didn't respond. Her eyes locked with mine, then shifted to Walter. Color drained. Her smile collapsed. She opened her mouth slightly, but no sound came out. Walter leaned forward just a little. Didn't wave, didn't nod, just stared. She looked at Graham and said something fast. He leaned to look at us, confused, still smiling, that kind of smug obliviousness that only comes before complete and total collapse. The fuse had been lit, and neither of them even smelled the smoke yet. The waiter approached their table with casual elegance, just enough flourish to seem sincere, not so much that it looked staged. He held the bottle with both hands, label facing out. Compliments of the gentleman in the Navy, he said, tone light. Apologies, wrong table. Thought this was for you. Rachel looked up. At first, she smiled reflexively, because that's what she does when servers acknowledge her, a kind of default, high society politeness. Then her eyes followed the waiter's gesture and found me. It was like watching a circuit short. Her smile didn't fall. It shattered, not all at once either. It twitched at the corner. Then the cheek muscles dropped, the eyes widened slightly, blinked once, twice. She turned her head like maybe she'd seen wrong. Then her gaze landed on Walter, and that's when the color left. I've never seen a face pale that fast without a stroke involved. I sat still, didn't blink, didn't raise my glass, just watched her process it. Her lips moved around some half-formed word. Graham was still smiling beside her, half listening, clearly unaware he'd just wandered into the lion's den wearing raw meat for cologne. She leaned toward him, whispered something sharp. He chuckled. That corporate, dismissive chuckle men like him are trained to give. You're being dramatic, is what the chuckle always means. Then he looked over his shoulder. His grin faded about 3 degrees when he saw me, then Walter. Then he looked back at Rachel, and I swear to God he flinched. Rachel's hand drifted toward her wine glass but didn't touch it. I could see her legs shift under the table, the way someone adjusts when they feel exposed, suddenly remembering how sheer her dress actually is, how high the slit cuts, how visible she's made herself. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was trapped. The table of executives beside them was still mid-laughter, unaware. Their plates hadn't even arrived yet, but Rachel's night was already cooked. She tried to recover, straightened her back, tucked her hair behind one ear like she was reclaiming dignity from a wreckage, but the movements were robotic now, disconnected from the woman who walked in laughing like she owned the room. I caught her glance toward the entrance, thinking of the escape routes already. Walter leaned slightly toward me and muttered, "Do we let her run?" "No," I said, "we let her sweat." Her fingers were trembling now. She reached for her clutch. I watched as she pulled out her phone, checked it, typed something quickly, then froze again. Whatever she was trying to do, maybe texting me, maybe texting Walter, she realized the absurdity of it mid-action. There's no text to fix this. You don't unsend the manila envelope you handed your father in person. You don't unkiss your boss at a conference you swore was strictly professional. You don't uninvite your own husband to your humiliation. She whispered again to Graham, more urgently. He leaned in this time, face turned toward us for a second longer. His brow twitched. He asked something. I could read his lips. "That's your dad?" She nodded once. Barely. He turned toward Walter, gave him a half wave. Walter didn't move. No salute. No nod. Just ice. That's when Graham's smile finally broke. His fingers drummed nervously on the tablecloth. The waiter returned with their food, which no one touched. Rachel stared down at her risotto like it was a loaded weapon. She looked at me again. Our eyes locked. No rage, no sorrow. Just one long suffocating moment of, "You did this to yourself." And she knew it. She couldn't unsee what was coming next, and she couldn't stop it. Walter didn't ask permission. He didn't clear his throat, didn't glance at me, didn't check if the timing was right. He just stood, one smooth, deliberate motion, like the kind of decision he used to make with a rifle slung over his shoulder and the smell of gunpowder in the air. His chair scraped against the tile as he pushed it back, the sound slicing through the murmur of forks and wine glasses like a fire alarm. Heads turned, only a few at first, then more. Rachel saw him coming. Her mouth opened slightly. She stood halfway, one hand extended like she might intercept him. Walter didn't stop. He pulled out the empty chair next to her, the one intended for the executive VP who never showed, and sat down without a word. Then calmly, like he was starting a conversation over Sunday pancakes, he asked, "You proud of this?" Rachel froze mid-reach. Her hand dropped. Her mouth hung open. No words came. Her boss, Graham, in his unseasoned arrogance, tried to fill the silence, chuckled lightly. "Sir, I think there's been some—" Walter turned his head slowly, and when he spoke again, it was like steel being poured into a mold. "Do you know she's married?" Graham blinked. She said they were, did she say divorced, separated?" Walter's voice was calm but dangerous now. "Or did she just let you assume while she played house with you at the company's expense?" Rachel tried to speak. "Dad, please." He cut her off with a raised hand. Don't you dare." The room was dead quiet now. Diners stopped mid-bite. Silverware hovered above plates. Even the music felt like it faded out, swallowed by the weight of his voice. Walter's eyes narrowed. "You remember what your mother said when she gave you that promise ring back in high school? About the kind of woman she hoped you'd grow up to be?" Rachel looked down. Walter leaned in, voice lower now, but every word hit like a gavel. "This is how you represent our family? Parading around half-naked, draped on the arm of some clown with a title, letting him touch you like you were something bought at auction?" Graham raised his hands. "Look, I didn't know she—" Walter snapped to him. "I'm not talking to you. You're irrelevant. This isn't about you. This is about her, my daughter, the girl I raised with respect, with discipline, who knew how to carry herself." Rachel's voice finally broke through. "It's not like that. This isn't—" "Then what is it, Rachel?" Walter asked, louder now. "Is this your promotion strategy? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a hell of a lot like self-respect got traded for wine and a LinkedIn endorsement." Graham stood abruptly. "All right, that's enough." Walter didn't even glance at him. "Sit down. You've embarrassed yourself enough." Graham hesitated, then sat, deflated, shrinking by the second. Rachel was breathing shallow now. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady her napkin, but it slipped from her lap and dropped to the floor. Walter looked at her like she was a stranger. "I defended you. When people said you'd lost yourself in that career ladder, I said they were wrong, that you still had your values, that your mother would still be proud of who you became." He paused. She wouldn't be. The tablecloth rippled from Rachel's shaking. "I wore this," Walter said, pointing at his tie pin, "because I thought tonight was a battle, but this isn't a war. This is an execution, and you've done it to yourself." Rachel whispered something I couldn't hear. Walter stood slowly. "You think you've evolved, Rachel, that this is some modern version of womanhood. But let me ask you, if this was reversed, if your husband showed up in some cheap hotel with a secretary in a see-through dress, what would you call it?" No answer. He looked around the restaurant. "Anyone here call it business strategy?" A few diners shook their heads. One woman near the window muttered, "Shameless." Rachel's eyes welled. "Exactly," Walter said. And just like that, he turned and walked away. No drama, no yelling. He didn't need to throw a fit. The silence he left behind was louder than any explosion. The air in Willow and Cowards was changing. Fast. You could feel it. Like the sudden hush that rolls in right before a summer storm. It started at the table next to theirs. A man in a navy sport coat glanced over when Walter's voice cut through the hum of conversation. Then the couple across the aisle turned their heads too. Within a minute, 3 diners had stopped eating altogether, leaning back in their chairs under the pretense of relaxing, but really just watching. Then the phones came out. Not blatant. No one wanted to look rude, but this was a town where gossip paid in dividends. One woman in a pink blazer angled her screen low, camera open. Another man tilted his iPhone just enough to get a wide shot of the unfolding chaos. Rachel hadn't noticed yet. She was too busy trying to control the wreckage. Her voice was low, pleading, "Can we go outside, please? I just want to explain." Walter didn't even flinch. He stayed seated, shoulders squared, arms resting calmly on the table. His water glass remained untouched. That pin on his tie caught the chandelier light just enough to give it a holy glint. Her boss, Graham, was still catching up. You could see the pieces assembling behind his eyes like a sluggish processor finally booting up. He leaned slightly forward, hesitant. "Wait, you're her father?" Walter turned to him slowly. "That's right." Graham blinked. Walter nodded in my direction. "And he's her husband." At that moment, I raised my glass from across the room, not a toast, just acknowledgement, nothing in my expression, no smugness, no fury, just a quiet, clean, "You've been seen." Graham's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to Rachel, then back to Walter, then back to me. He looked like a kid caught cheating during finals. Not angry, not even defensive, just stupid. Rachel reached across the table, almost desperate now. "Dad, please, don't do this here." Walter exhaled, slow, controlled. "Don't do this here?" He turned toward her, his voice rising just enough to carry. "You brought this here?" Now she was aware of the eyes, the whispers. She glanced around, her lips twitching into a tight, frozen smile that collapsed the second it formed. The pink blazer woman across the aisle mouthed something to her date. A waiter nearby backed up 2 steps, pretending to polish a spoon, though his eyes never left the scene. "You think this makes you powerful?" Walter asked, not yelling, but louder now, clearer, so that even the tables in the back could hear him. He gestured at her, at the sheer fabric stretched tight across her chest, at the empty wine glass, at the man beside her with his jaw halfway to the floor. "This is power to you, sitting half-dressed in a restaurant with a man who doesn't even know who you are?" Rachel's hands gripped the tablecloth now, fingers tightening like she could hold the moment still. "You used to walk into rooms with dignity," Walter continued. "Not whatever this performance is." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand." "No, you don't," Walter said, rising again, this time with steel in his spine. "You don't understand what you burned through to get here. A husband, a family, your own mother's memory. All for what? Some mid-level executive who's already wondering if HR saw this on the security cameras?" Graham flinched. Rachel looked at me. That was the first time all night she actually looked. Not glanced, not acknowledged, looked, and saw that I wasn't coming over, that I wasn't going to make a scene, because I didn't have to. She was doing all the work for me. She turned back to her father, tears welling now, her voice barely audible. "Please, I made a mistake." "No," Walter interrupted. "You chose this. You made dozens of choices that led here." Around us, plates sat untouched. Conversations halted. The tension wasn't in the yelling. It was in the stillness. The sound of a public unraveling. of a woman who'd walked in with playful confidence and now sat trapped in a hurricane of her own making. There was no hole left to crawl into, no one left to defend her, and the worst part, she knew it. Graham stood up like a man stepping off a sinking ship, brushing imaginary lint from his sleeves as if that might somehow undo the past 10 minutes. He didn't say goodbye, didn't offer a word to Rachel. He just muttered something to the waiter and left his half-finished steak behind, walking fast enough to look urgent but not so fast he'd appear panicked. Too late. His panic had been on display for the last 15 minutes and everyone saw it. Walter didn't watch him go. Instead, he reached into his blazer and pulled out a folded, yellowing piece of paper. He smoothed it gently with his thumb and placed it on the white linen tablecloth in front of Rachel. She looked at it like it might burn her fingers. "She wrote this before she passed," Walter said. "Told me to give it to you if I ever stop recognizing the woman we raised." Rachel's hands trembled as she reached for it. Her fingernails clicked against the glass of water as she moved it aside, clumsy, unsure. Her fingers were always precise, surgical when applying makeup, always so exact when choosing wine or adjusting her skirt in meetings. But not now. Now they shook like she'd been dropped into a foreign body. She unfolded the letter with the delicate fear of someone expecting to be wounded by it. The page was nearly blank. One sentence, handwritten in her mother's careful, looping script. "You used to be better than this." Rachel blinked hard. Once. Twice. The words didn't change. The air around her changed, though. The silence wasn't sharp anymore. It was heavy, suffocating, like wet wool pressing down on her chest. Her mouth parted slightly like she might protest, might defend herself, might say something to make it all stop. But there was no defense left, no spin, no exit. She looked around. Every single person in that restaurant was watching. Not one with a phone still raised, just real eyes now, human eyes. Judging, pitying, disgusted, intrigued, no longer gossiping, just waiting to see what she would do next. I stood then, calm, straightened my jacket with one tug, pushed my chair in slowly. No rush. Then I walked toward their table, stopping a foot away from where she sat, hunched slightly now, the note still trembling in her hands. I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. "Dinner's on me," I said quietly. She looked up, eyes red and glossy, mascara beginning to crack. I leaned in just enough so she could hear the rest. "You'll want to call a cab." She didn't say anything, just stared at me like she was waiting for some alternative ending to appear. A rescue, a reset, a plea, something, but I wasn't giving her that. I nodded once to Walter, who gave me the slightest return nod back. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, I heard her exhale like she'd been holding her breath for a week. The sound was sharp, broken, but no one rushed to comfort her. No one moved at all. Rachel had been exposed, fully, brutally, and worse, she hadn't been screamed at, slapped, or dragged out. She'd been abandoned. That kind of silence, it never leaves you. She came home sometime after midnight. Maybe closer to 1, I don't know exactly. I wasn't there to clock it, and that was the point. The house was dark, cleaner than she remembered it. Quieter, too. The way a hotel room feels after checkout, like no one belongs there anymore. Her heels clicked against the hardwood. No sound from the kitchen, no TV on in the den, just the low mechanical hum of the fridge and the tick of the old wall clock that used to annoy her when she couldn't sleep. She called my name once, softly, like testing the water. No answer. She wandered toward the bedroom, opened the door. The closet was half empty, my side cleared, shirts gone, drawers stripped bare, no cologne on the dresser, no boots under the bed, the spot where I kept my watch, dustless. But what she noticed most wasn't what was missing, it was what was left. A thick envelope sat on the dining table, just off center, neat, intentional divorce papers stapled clean, and on top, in my handwriting, one line. "I won't keep you from who you're becoming." No threats, no sarcasm, no plea for explanation. Just a quiet permission slip to continue her descent, uninterrupted. She stood there for a long time, the envelope hanging from her hand like a dead weight. She didn't cry, not yet. That kind of grief comes later, when the adrenaline's gone and the mirror gets cruel. She called me once, straight to voicemail. She tried Walter next, twice. Both went to missed call. She texted him, "Please, Dad, can we talk?" Blocked. The next morning she tried Graham. No answer. By noon she heard the rumor HR had restructured. Graham was being transferred to the Denver office, effective immediately. She texted him again. "Are you okay?" No response. By 5, she sat in the guest room of her friend Karen's townhouse, one of those high-ceilinged condos with overpriced throw pillows and an underused Peloton in the corner. Karen tried to be warm, but there was a distance in her eyes now, like hosting a ghost, like she didn't quite know what version of Rachel she was speaking to anymore. "Just for a few days," Rachel had said when she arrived, "until it blows over." Karen had nodded. Of course. But there was no invitation for dinner, no glass of wine, just a spare towel and a set of sheets left folded on the bed. No one called that night. No mom, no dad, no husband, no boss, not even the girls from work who used to flood her DMs every time she posted a boomerang with a wine glass. Her phone buzzed only once, a calendar reminder, Q3 review, 7 p.m. Herbert Willow & Co. She stared at it, then deleted it. She checked my Instagram, but the account was deactivated. She opened our wedding photo from the cloud drive, tried zooming in on my face. Still nothing there. No rage, no betrayal, just absence, the kind that echoes. That night, she curled up in a borrowed bed, wearing one of Karen's oversized sweatshirts, mascara dried in flecks at the corner of her eye, and listened to the silence she'd earned. It didn't scream, it didn't accuse, it just refused to fill the space. It showed up in the mail one afternoon in early spring, no envelope, just a postcard, glossy, heavy stock, one side blank, no message, no name, no return address, just an image. Willow & Co. photographed from the outside, mid-evening golden hour light spilling through the windows, table set, a faint silhouette near the back window that might have been her, might have been no one. Didn't matter. I turned it over, half expecting a second shoe, a threat, an apology, some last desperate attempt to resuscitate a narrative she no longer controlled. Nothing, just the grainy stamp of a small-town post office and my name written in familiar cursive. I stood there in my kitchen for a minute, thumb resting against the edge, then I dropped it in the trash. Not shredded, not burned, just discarded, like a receipt for a thing I no longer owned. Then I went back outside. The deck was half sanded, wood dust curling around my boots. The lake just beyond it was still, the water glassy. My dog, Murphy, laid sprawled in the shade, tail twitching every few seconds. He didn't bark when the mailman came anymore. Neither of us had anyone to impress. The cabin wasn't huge, but it was mine, bought in full. 3 months after I left, I sold the house Rachel and I had shared and bought this place outright. I didn't want her name on anything anymore, not even memories. Out here, there's no Wi-Fi, no company mixers, no wine glasses left on the counter with lipstick stains, just quiet and wood that needs sanding. Walter comes by now and then, sometimes unannounced. He brings jerky or beer, occasionally his old tackle box. We talk about fishing, about the water level, about the right kind of sandpaper for redwood. We don't talk about her, we don't need to. She tried once, called from a friend's number, left a voicemail that started with my name and ended in silence. I deleted it before she could finish the sentence. There's nothing she could say that wouldn't sound like rust scraping against something I already replaced. Sometimes I wonder if she tells the story differently. If in her version I was cruel or cold or overreacted. Maybe she spins it so Graham manipulated her, or that the whole thing was never as bad as it looked. Maybe she leaves out the part where she laughed walking into that restaurant, like she was the main event, and I was just the ghost in the credits. But deep down, I think she knows, because that postcard wasn't about reconnecting. It was about remembering that place, that moment, that collapse. She's still staring at the scene, still replaying it in her head, like maybe if she just squints hard enough, the ending changes. It doesn't. That was always the point. Revenge wasn't about fury. I never needed to scream. I never raised a hand or a voice. I just opened the curtain, turned on the lights, and let the audience see what she really was. And then I left. While she was still watching,